What is up, YouTube? I'm Devon DaVinci, leader of the Renaissance crew, and you're watching DaVinci Reacts. Before I go ahead and get into this, I do want to let you guys know, watch the original video. I have a link for it in the description box down below. You can click on it and go straight to the video and watch it in its entirety. The reason why I asked this is because normally OverSimplified will copyright their videos. And when somebody does a reaction or something like that, it'll get copyright claims. So all the videos, even when you watch my videos, the money goes straight to OverSimplified. All the ad revenue and stuff goes straight to them. I don't make a single penny on it. I don't have an issue with that. But I did notice the last video that they released, they did not have copyright claimed. So I do want you guys to know that sometimes their videos, I guess, aren't copyright claimed. So to do them a favor, please go and check out their channel and watch their video. Give it a view so that they can continue to make ad revenue and continue to make videos that we all enjoy. Because I want to see that goddamn Vietnam video. They say they were going to do a video about Vietnam War, and I want to see it. So go and show them support. I'll leave a link for their channel at the end of this video as well that you can click on, and it'll take you to it. You can subscribe and stuff if you already haven't. If you've already seen this video, you're good. You're free to continue to watch the reaction, but I do ask that you do that in case you haven't. So let's go ahead and check this out. This is Cold War Part 1. If you guys haven't already seen it, I've already done World War II. I've done the video on Hitler, which got demonetized. And when I asked for a manual review, it still got demonetized. So apparently Hitler is a buzzword on YouTube that you just flat out can't say, regardless of the context, which I think is a bad idea. And I've done the American Revolution. I believe that might be all of them I've done. There are more of them I gotta check out. But anyway, let's get into this and see what it has to offer.
I've decided that in order to sell more merch, I should do a face reveal wearing some of it. So are you ready? Here we go. Boom. New Minimalist and Cold War merch available now, and get the new limited edition.
Something tells me this isn't right.
It sells out, with more characters coming in the future. Link in the description
down
below.
He's so strong, he's busting out of his shirt.
The year is 1917. Fighting rages on the Eastern Front of the First World War. Both Germany and Russia are on the brink of collapse. Soldier, I need you to bring me this man. Got it. Found him, sir. What? No, not Lenin. Lenin, the Russian communist. What? Why would I need a beetle? Lenin, the Russian communist. He was exiled to Switzerland. You know what?
Why would I need a beetle? So quiet.
Who wants to start a revolution?
Oh, yeah. Look at all that Kool-Aid in the back. That's what happens when somebody busts into your house. You get unlimited Kool-Aid.
The Germans put Lenin on a train and sent him all the way back to Russia, hoping he and his mates would create an internal crisis. And create an internal crisis they did. The government was overthrown, and Lenin was in charge. He immediately pulled out of the First World War, made the country communist, started a 3-year-long civil war, got shot, broke the economy, caused a famine, and then he died.
Yeah, somebody was telling me, I mentioned something about this in World War II, or I think the Hitler video, one of them, where I said that it's weird that Germany has an issue with communism because communism is kind of the reason why they jumped out of World War One. Somebody mentioned that I guess Russia had a government that was overthrown by another government, and then that second government was overthrown by Lenin and them. So, I mean, that would kind of change the way that well, that's the first time I ever heard about it. And plus, they said that Russia wasn't the only country that was currently facing revolutions from communists. Germany was one as well. That's the reason why they kind of had an issue with Germany, or with communism, I guess.
On his deathbed, he said, "Hey man, tell whoever's in charge of giving people jobs not to let that jerk Stalin become the next leader. By the way,
I know where
who
this
did
is
I
going.
put in charge of giving people jobs? That would be Stalin, sir."
I had a feeling.
Stalin was a rising force in the Communist Party. He still had some opponents, but conveniently, all of them were arrested or disappeared. So that was lucky.
Yay.
And so Stalin took over. He implemented his 5-year plans, which transformed the country from an agriculture-based economy to an industrial one. And like Lenin before him, he reigned with terror. Anyone who dared criticize or oppose him would either be killed or left to rot in the horrendous Soviet work camps. Then a short man with a silly mustache tried to take over the world, punched the Russians all the way to Moscow, and then the Russians, with some help from their faithful ally, the Winter, punched them all the way back to Berlin. At this point, being allies, America, the UK, and the Soviet Union were good chums. They held a couple of conferences near the end of the war to decide what would happen next. Hey Stalin, after all your trials and tribulations...
Let's not sit here and pretend like the Soviet Union were allies with UK and America simply because they all had a very noble cause. They had a common goal. That's what it was. It was taking out Hitler. Stalin probably would not have given a damn about Hitler if Hitler hadn't have betrayed their little treaty and attacked them prematurely. I'm sure Stalin knew that an attack was going to come at some point, but Hitler kind of preemptively jumped to it, and he kind of had no choice but to ally up with the Western powers.
You must be pretty happy to be standing here in Berlin. Tsar Alexander made it all the way to Paris. Just give me a second. Hey man, I think something's up with Stalin. I know, right? What should we do? Shall I tell him about the bomb? Yeah, tell him about the bomb. That will scare him. So, we got this crazy new big A-bomb that can destroy an entire city in one go. Yes, my spies told me already. Oh wait, I meant to act surprised. Wow, that's amazing. He already knew. How? Am I sure I want to send nuclear secrets via unsecure public coffee shop Wi-Fi?
Starducks.
Am I ever? Dude, use a VPN. And speaking of VPNs, if, like me, you take internet safety seriously, then you need NordVPN. NordVPN hides your online activities from outside.
I will keep this ad in, of course. I always try to keep the ad in whenever a content creator is sponsored by something. But I will say this. If you're from UK or the EU, I know the Article 13 thing just passed. I'm not sure how VPNs work as far as like using that as a way to get around it, but you can possibly, if it is something that you can get around with, use something like this to, you know, get around it. So be sure to check out OverSimplified's link to check out VPNs.
That's just $2.99 per month with an additional month free for a limited time. So again, that's nordvpn.com/oversimplified, also in the description box down below. Now where were we? Oh yeah. Does the A stand for atomic or ass? Then America dropped their big A-bomb on Japan, and World War II officially...
It's an ass bomb!
Hooray, we won! Okay, so now it's time to establish the New World Order. Stalin, you're in charge of Eastern Europe. Now, we want you to let them all hold elections. Oh yes, of course, elections. And these elections will be free and fair, right? Oh yes, certainly, free and fair. Definitely free and fair. Communist, 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 communist. If that's not free and fair, I don't know what is. Throughout Eastern Europe, Soviet puppet governments were established as a buffer zone between the USSR and the West, with Churchill proclaiming an Iron Curtain had descended across the continent. The relationship between the old allies was deteriorating fast. Over the next few years, the British intervened in the Greek Civil War to prevent a communist takeover. In Turkey, the Russians began demanding more control of Turkey's sea access routes, which prompted the US to send their largest battleship to Turkey for a friendly visit. After World War II, Iran was now occupied by both the Soviets and the British, with an agreement to both pull out once the war was over. The British pulled out. Stalin was like, you know what? I think I might stick around. All in favor of kicking Russia out of Iran? You want to know something? You guys suck. Pressure from the UN forced the Soviets to leave, and with the establishment of NATO, the Soviets had no doubt that the West was out to encircle and destroy them. And America announced the Truman Doctrine, in which they basically said, those guys are not cool, cannot be trusted, and we will do everything we can to prevent the spread of communism around the world. Many viewed this moment as the official declaration of the Cold War. Back in Europe, everyone was living in a post-apocalyptic void brought on by the Second World War.
Get them while they're hot. Rat on a stick, boiled shoes.
It was terrible. This is great. The more they suffered, the more likely it is they'll turn to communism. Dude, you're really messed up. What's wrong with you? My father used to punish me severely. America realized what was going on and quickly made a move.
If you had enough brothers, maybe you could have done a music group.
To Western Europe for its economic recovery. The countries of Stalin's Eastern Bloc looked on with envy. Hey, Czechoslovakia, you want to come get some economic aid? Yeah, but I have to check with my mom first. Sorry, America. I can't come. This was a full-on economic
We
battle
need more
raging
pictures
between
of Stalin in
capitalism
a
and
dress.
communism in Europe. If the Western nations developed faster and better than the East, that would be a defeat for Stalin. So he set up his own rival economic recovery plan, which he called COMINFORM, and he also set up COMINFORM, which gave him more political control over the Eastern Bloc. But nowhere did this economic battle rage harder than in the city of
Was it
Berlin.
actually called
Caught over
Comic-Con?
100 miles behind Soviet lines, the city had been divided up between the Allies, and the western segments were still under Western control. East Berliners could travel freely to West Berlin, see the economic prosperity, and think, maybe this communism thing ain't so
Das
great after all.
Boot.
I'm gonna have fun tonight. You're home late. Oh, Stalin. I was just out with my friends.
They have a
Friends?
child
You
together.
stink of capitalism. You're out engaging in
Let's
imperialist
not get
debauchery
around
again.
that.
I swear
They have a
I
child
can't
together.
keep doing this.
Stalin
wanted
gave
the West
birth.
out. So he said, hey, guess what? I'm blockading all of your supply routes to West Berlin. What are you going to do about it? I suppose we'll just fly the supplies in.
That's what happens when, you think a wall is going to be effective. Or a blockade or whatever.
You in this round. The Berlin airlift was an incredible undertaking and a major success for the Western Allies, and Stalin ended his blockade of West Berlin. His aggressive actions worried the West, but not as much as this did. The Soviet Union had developed their very own atomic bomb. The USA no longer had a nuclear monopoly. The world now knew that if a major war
Damn
broke
you,
out between the two
Rothbergs!
superpowers, it would be more destructive than anyone could imagine. So it was comforting when Stalin came out and said that war between the Soviet Union and the West was unlikely. Oh, wait, inevitable. He said it was inevitable. Hey,
That's a
you
hell
know
of a
who
slip
I haven't
up.
checked in on in a while? My good friend China. Whoa, what happened to you? What happened to them was a full-blown civil war that had been going on since 1927. The People's Liberation Army, under the leadership of Mao Zedong, successfully defeated the Republic of China, who fled to Taiwan.
I
But
didn't
now
know that they
Communist
had a
China and the
ceasefire
Soviet
during
Union
World War
signed a
II.
mutual
So
defense
y'all explain
treaty.
that to
This
me.
was terrible news for the West. But wait. There's more. After the Second World War, Korea was divided along the 38th parallel. In the north, the Soviets set up a communist regime. In the south, America set up an anti-communist regime. Both were led by very sweet-looking old men, but don't let that deceive you. They were both ruthless dictators, and both dreamed of reuniting Korea under their own regime. Now that he had the bomb, Stalin was feeling a little more cocky, and he finally gave Kim permission to attack. The North launched a surprise invasion of the South on June 25th, 1950. With Soviet aid, the North Koreans steamrolled.
Does anybody else, one second, let me get my time up to make sure that I'm not going over. Does anybody else consider it weird that in almost every one of these proxy wars, the North is always the communist side and the South is always the anti-communist side? Has there ever been a situation where a country was at civil war with itself and the North was the anti-communist and the South were the communist side? Like, it always seems like it's like that. Like, either, like, communists always take up the East and the North, and the anti-communists always take over the West and the South. Oh, it just seems weird.
Through, taking Seoul in just 3 days and replacing one ruthless dictator with another. The UN were freaking out and quickly created an emergency force made up of troops from 16 countries to defend the south. The West still held Busan and made landings at Incheon near Seoul. They pushed the North Koreans out of Seoul, replacing the ruthless dictator that had replaced the first ruthless dictator with the same ruthless dictator that had previously been replaced by the new ruthless dictator. And the West then continued all the way up the Korean peninsula. At this point, China was getting worried that the UN may just keep going. The US had sent this
The
guy
US
to
should
lead
have
the
stopped right
operation.
there.
After winning the
Or the
Pacific
UN
Theater
should have
of
stopped
World War
right there
II,
and just let it
General
strip,
Douglas
just sit
MacArthur's
there
head
for
was
North
big,
Korea.
And his balls were bigger. He reassured President Truman that there was absolutely no way at all that the Chinese would ever get involved. Meanwhile, 500,000 Chinese troops were crossing into Korea. Nuke 'em. No. Nuke 'em. No. Oh, come on. You're fired.
Yeah, that's what
The
eventually
US
got him
considered
fired.
the nuclear option, but now that the Soviets also had the bomb, they didn't want to risk all-out global destruction. The communists pushed the West right back almost to the exact same spot they had all started from, and they ended up in a stalemate, where they remained until both sides finally agreed to work towards a peace settlement in 2018. Back in America, Americans decided they wanted a new president
Hey,
who would be tough
Kim
on
Jong-un
communism.
is kinda
So they
thick,
elected
ain't he?
famed World War II general Eisenhower,
Pause.
who is really hard to draw. It's
I don't give a fuck.
1953. Hey, Stalin.
Unpause.
How you doing? Oh, he's dead. He had a cerebral hemorrhage, and his reign of terror kinda came back to bite him in the ass, because he had imprisoned all of his best doctors, and those that were left were too terrified to treat him. The new leader, Nikita Khrushchev, called a meeting and said, "Hey guys, you know how Stalin was imprisoning and murdering us all for doing basically nothing? Yeah, he was kind of a jerk. I'm really not sure how this is news to you." Khrushchev went on a campaign of de-Stalinization. Statues of Stalin were taken down, Stalingrad was renamed, and Khrushchev announced that he wanted the Soviet people to be happy and would allow greater freedom in the Soviet Union. So how did that work out? Well, an uprising in East Germany was brutally suppressed, a revolution in Hungary was brutally suppressed, and demonstrations in Poland were brutally suppressed. Although he did finally allow some mild reforms. Back in the Soviet Union, he permitted more cultural expression, but then began banning stuff based on his own personal taste. Modern art looks like a child urinated on a canvas. Banned. Jazz music sounds like the feeling of needing to fart. Banned. Your poetry is really depressing. How could anyone in the Soviet Union be depressed? You're banned. Khrushchev wanted the Soviet people to be happy, but not like that, or that, or that. Young people began enjoying abhorrent Western pop culture. Son, remove that disgusting imperialist apparel at once. Shut up, Dad. You can't tell me what to do. Well, would you look at that? Turns out he can tell me what to do. The West had initially liked the cut of Khrushchev's jib, but world events soon soured relations even more. The two sides were spying on each other a whole lot throughout the Cold War. The KGB had spies and informants in nearly every aspect of Western life and government, so much so that whenever the US tried to send spies into the Soviet Union, the KGB were usually ready to arrest them on the spot. Members of the Manhattan Project aided the Soviet Union in acquiring the bomb. Some American officials believed they were on the wrong side. I'll sell you 3 secrets for $5 million. Okay. Go ahead. The Allies are digging a tunnel under East Berlin to tap your communications. There's an American agent living at this address in Moscow, and sometimes, when I'm home alone, I like to put on my wife's dresses, sit in the corner, and cry for hours. Very interesting. In America, fear took hold during the Red Scare and the McCarthy trials. American values imploded as fear of communism collided with freedom of thought and expression, and communist kind of became a buzzword thrown around to describe anything people didn't like. Hollywood? Communist. Your next door neighbor's dog? Communist. When the grocery store cashier asks if you need a bag when you clearly can't carry 10 tubs of baconaise in your hands, communist. But one area in particular where the US had an edge over the Soviet Union was in its espionage technology. In particular, U-2 spy planes flew across Russia carrying out surveillance from the skies.
I get it.
There was a nasty incident in 1960 though, when one was shot down and Khrushchev was furious. Who the hell is this? He's a high-altitude weather enthusiast who flew off course. Okay, that sounds plausible. Wait a minute. Why does he have a gun and a poison needle? Because he's a very naughty high-altitude weather enthusiast. But much to America's concern, the Soviet Union appeared to be ahead in the space race. Everyone freaked out when Russia launched the world's first satellite, and then they actually sent a man into space. Even worse, there also appeared to be a missile gap in the Soviets' favor, and Khrushchev was so confident that he even allowed the US to set up a technology exhibit in Moscow, attended by a certain Vice President Richard Nixon. Check this out. We have color TV. Yes, but we've been to space and can obliterate you with our massive nuclear arsenal. Check out this vegetable peeler. Tensions increased further when both sides upgraded their atomic bombs to hydrogen bombs. And after West Germany was allowed to join NATO in 1955, Khrushchev set up the defensive Warsaw Pact, strengthening the military ties between the Soviet Union and its satellite states.
Anybody that knows anything about a game called Rise of Nations, it's a real-time RTS genre game, and it has all these scenarios. This is where I first heard of NATO and Warsaw Pact. I must have been like, I want to say maybe 11 or 12 when I first played the game. But yeah, I didn't know anything about the Warsaw Pact, and I knew hardly nothing about NATO. I knew the name, but that was it. So that kind of opened my eyes to how that works. So for those of you that say video games don't teach you anything, that's a lie.
In 1960, Americans decided they wanted a new president who would be tough on communism, so they elected John F. Kennedy. The Soviet Union was advancing its technology, but it was also bleeding its coffers dry, and all of the money was going towards the military, not the people. Life under communism was still as hard as ever, and Berlin remained a thorn in the Soviet side. The contrast between the economically prosperous West and the struggling East was clearer day by day, and East Berliners were still able to freely travel to the West. Now, many of them were deciding to stay there. Millions defected to West Germany via West Berlin, causing Eastern factories to lose workers and taking a heavy toll on the economy. Soviet leaders decided this couldn't continue any longer. First, Khrushchev tried this: leave West Berlin, or else. Or else what? Or else, I'll be really mad at you. Yeah, no, we're gonna stay. Listen, man, West Berlin is ours, East Berlin is yours. That's just how it is. Kennedy felt pretty good about his show of American resolve. But wait a second.
That cockeye, man, I can't get around it.
East Berlin is yours.
Uh-oh, Kennedy just told Khrushchev that the USA wouldn't interfere in what the Soviets did with their section of Berlin. So Khrushchev came up with a new idea. We're gonna build a wall, and it's gonna be a big, beautiful wall, and it's gonna keep out all the Mexicans. No, that's wrong, it's gonna keep in the East Berliners. Oh, sorry, it's gonna keep in all the Mexicans. On August
That guy
13th,
clearly said East
1961,
Berliners.
Berliners woke up to find their city divided into two, with barbed wire and guards blocking the border between East and West. Over time, a wall was constructed throughout the city. Families were torn apart. Thousands would risk their lives escaping over the wall, and hundreds would die trying. To the despair of Berliners, the West were unable to do anything about it, but
I really want to hear people's story about the Berlin Wall, because I know a lot of people. I told you guys in my World War II video that if you happen to have any stories from family members or something about how life was during that time or following that time, I know that there are people that are subscribed to me that know about the Berlin Wall, because the Berlin Wall was taken down in what, 1991? 1989, I think, was when the Berlin Wall came down. So that was the year I was born. So if you're older than me, then you should in some way remember the Berlin Wall if you happen to be from that area. Leave your stories and leave your testimonies, because I am really interested in hearing firsthand accounts of what it was like living in Germany during that time, or Berlin during that time, or even East Europe in any way.
the wall did put on full display the failure of the communist system. As Kennedy said, democracy
When's
is
the
not
next
perfect,
video?
but we have never had to put a wall up to keep our people in. As part of the agreement between the two sides, U.S. diplomats were still allowed
True.
to travel to East Berlin. But suddenly, East Berlin crossing guards started giving them the business. And Kennedy was like, nah-uh. In October, the U.S. rolled tanks up to the crossing point at Checkpoint Charlie as a show of strength. The Soviets did the same, and the two were in a standoff. They stayed like that for 16 hours, and the world braced for nuclear Armageddon. Thankfully, though, Kennedy called Khrushchev directly and was like, hey man, this is getting way too hot. How about you back your tanks up by an inch and we'll do the same? Sounds good. Okay, how about you back your tanks up by another inch
He has
and
one
we'll
of them
follow
Russian
suit.
dolls.
Alright, hey, you want to do another inch? And they both very slowly inched away from the apocalypse. Phew, let's hope that's the biggest crisis of my presidency. It wasn't.
How do you feel about Cuba? Looks like a pickle going into a hammer on that shirt. Yeah, World War II. It is freaking crazy. Not World War II, Cold War. What am I talking about? You know something that's interesting? A lot of people talk about getting rid of nuclear weapons, and I know that there was movements at a time to like remove nuclear weapons and things like that. And the funny thing is, this long peace this long supposed peace that we've had, there have been smaller wars since World War II, but this long-standing peace that we've had can be contributed directly to the fact of us having nuclear weapons. In a lot of ways, nuclear weapons are a deterrent. People aren't going to go to war simply because they know of the ramifications of going to war with a nuclear-powered nation. That's what's keeping the top economies from going to war with each other. If nuclear weapons were to just disappear overnight, I'm not going to say a war would happen immediately, but imagine if we didn't have nuclear weapons at all. Like, if nuclear weapons never existed. And I'm going to go based on the United States, because those are the conflicts or the high tension areas that I know the most about. United States would have gone to war with North Korea. We would have gone to war with Russia. We would have gone to war with Iran. We would have gone to war with China. We would have gone to war with, what other countries? There's some African countries we probably would have got directly involved with. Well, they're not nuclear weapons, so we probably did end up getting involved with them anyway. I know in the 90s we had a lot of wars that didn't really get a lot of attention, which is a shame, because I feel bad for the people that are from those countries. Like, they don't really get any press or anything like that. And I'm not just condemning America as one of these, like, oh, America's so blah, 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 while living in America. I understand that sometimes certain actions are required, but at the same time, it's like, I still think that you should draw attention to them and let people know what's going on in those countries, because there are a lot of people that, don't have anything to do with the insurgents and stuff from those countries, but they're still paying the price for a small percentage of people that are doing stuff. And I think that's wrong. I think that we as a people should come in and try to help them as much as we can. But yeah, just think of all the wars that would have happened had nuclear weapons not existed. Pakistan would have gone to war with India a long time ago. Somebody would have invaded Israel by now. Probably Egypt. there would have been another world war. It would have been a world war against Russia, the Western countries against Russia, and possibly China. Maybe the United States would have gotten more involved against China had Russia not had nuclear weapons. So it's possible maybe China, the communist takeover of China, might not have happened. I mean, that's possible. Just imagine how the world would have changed if nuclear weapons didn't exist. Now, don't get me wrong. The idea of having a weapon that could completely destroy the world is terrifying. And it's not a weapon that should have really been created. But now that it's been created, we kind of see the effects that it's had. And the fact that we haven't gone to war in such a long time is because of nuclear weapons. That's the bottom line. Now, let me know what you think, though. If you happen to have a difference in opinion, go ahead and leave it a comment in the comment section down below. I like having discussions with people in the comment section, so if you think that there's a difference, I am completely open to hearing your side, and maybe we can have a debate about it. But that's pretty much it. I want to thank you guys for coming through and watching another video. If you happen to like this video, make sure you hit that like button, subscribe, and share. Like I said, make sure you watch the original if you haven't already seen it. And make sure you check out OverSimplified's channel. There's going to be a link at the end of this video, usually the last 30 seconds or so. But that's pretty much it. I'm going to go ahead and sign out. I hope to see you guys on my next video. And I'm Devon DaVinci. You've just been enlightened. Deuces.